Well, let me explain something. At my age, you think you've experienced enough to stop being surprised. You expect that nothing new can really catch you off guard. But life has a way of reminding you that there's always another lesson waiting, another moment worth remembering. And this particular encounter still makes me shake my head and laugh when I think about it. It took place about 3 years ago. I was traveling from Los Angeles to New York for a business meeting. I've been around this industry long enough to understand that flying is not just about moving from one place to another. It's about service, dignity, and showing respect to every passenger. That belief is why, back when I invested deeply in SkyWest as a regional carrier and later became the majority owner, I made it a priority that each traveler, every single one, was valued. But here's something success teaches you quickly. You don't need to announce your importance. There's no reason to broadcast who you are. I've always believed that a person's character speaks louder than any title. So throughout my life, I've chosen to travel quietly, blending in, receiving no special privileges, being just another customer with a boarding pass. No entourage, no showmanship, just me. That day I dressed simply, jeans, a comfortable button-down shirt, a light jacket, and my old leather boots. Nothing eye-catching, nothing suggesting I owned an airline or lived a glamorous lifestyle. Just practical clothes for a long flight. I had a first-class ticket, seat 2A by the window, and I was looking forward to a peaceful trip where I could review some work and possibly rest. I reached LAX early, as I always do. My mother taught me the importance of punctuality, and it has stayed with me all my life. I went through security without any issues, grabbed a cup of coffee, and headed to the gate. Boarding was on schedule, and when they invited first-class passengers, I picked up my carry-on and walked down the jet bridge. As soon as I stepped on board, I noticed him. Sometimes you can just sense the type of person someone is. He stood in the aisle near the front. Even from behind, you could tell he held himself in very high regard. He wore an expensive suit, definitely high-end, likely custom Italian tailoring, the sort that costs more than many people earn in a month. His shoes were polished perfectly. His haircut looked freshly done, and his watch reflected the light every time he moved, one of those pieces bought for status rather than timekeeping. But it wasn't the outfit that caught my attention. It was his demeanor, the way he stood, the impatient gestures toward the flight attendant, the sense that he took up more room than necessary both physically and in presence. You could practically see the self-importance surrounding him. I continued down the aisle, giving a polite I nodded politely to the crew, and when I reached row 2, I stopped. There he was, sitting in my seat, seat 2A by the window, the one I had chosen when booking the flight weeks earlier. His laptop was open, his briefcase occupied the seat beside him, and he was typing quickly, completely unaware that he was sitting where someone else was assigned to be. I've never been someone who seeks conflict, not in real life anyway. In my films, the characters may handle problems with a tough expression or a sharp line, but personally, I believe in addressing issues calmly and respectfully. So I quietly cleared my throat and said, "Excuse me, sir. I believe you're in my seat." He didn't even glance up. Just kept typing as if I hadn't spoken. I waited a moment, giving him the benefit of the doubt. The plane was getting busy, noise rising around us, so perhaps he didn't hear me. I tried again, a little louder. "Excuse me. This is seat 2A. It's what I have on my boarding pass." This time he looked up, and the expression he gave me was unforgettable. In seconds he judged me, deciding I was not worth his attention. His gaze moved from my older face to my simple clothes and back again. You could almost see him evaluating and dismissing me. "The seat's taken," he said, flat and brief, before turning back to his keyboard. No apology, no explanation, no admission that he might be mistaken. Just 3 words, delivered like they were the final answer. A feeling rose inside me. Not anger, but a tired disappointment. Here was a man who was likely successful, educated, financially comfortable, yet missing something as simple as courtesy. "I'm sorry," I replied calmly, "but I selected this seat when I booked my ticket. Seat 2A is printed on my pass. Maybe there has been an error with your seat assignment." He sighed loudly, a deliberate sound meant to show how inconvenient I was being. Snapping his laptop shut, he finally faced me. "Look, old man," he said, "and I want you to note those 2 words. Old man, spoken with heavy disrespect. I'm not moving. I have important work to finish. I need this window for my presentation, and I don't have time for this. There are other empty seats on this plane. Why don't you take one in the back? The back. He actually suggested I move to the back as if I was less deserving of being up front. A flight attendant, a young woman named Sarah, and I remember her name because of what occurred later, had observed our interaction from the galley. She approached us, her professional smile still present, though I could sense concern behind it. Sir, she addressed the man politely. May I see your boarding pass? We need to be sure everyone is in their properly assigned seat before we can close the door. He waved her off. I'm in first class. That's all that matters. This seat is fine. I understand, sir, she continued calmly. But this passenger is assigned seat 2A on his pass. If you show me your ticket, we can locate your correct seat. I said I'm not moving. He snapped, raising his voice so loudly others nearby turned to watch. I am a platinum elite member of this airline. Do you know how much money I spend on flights? Do you have any idea who I am? And there it was. The typical line from someone who believes their status defines their importance. Do you know who I am? As if any of that should matter. As if his status should allow him to take whatever he wanted and treat others however he chose. Sarah stayed composed and professional. Sir, I'm sure we can sort this out quickly if you could show me your boarding pass, she said. He reached into his jacket pocket with an irritated motion and pulled out the pass, practically tossing it at her. She examined it, and I noticed a slight shift in her expression. She glanced at me, then back at him. Sir, your assigned seat is 5C, a middle seat in row 5. This gentleman is correct. He has seat 2A. His face reddened with frustration. That's not possible. I booked a window seat. I specifically requested a window seat. I'm not sitting in the middle like some economy traveler. Fix it. I'm sorry for any misunderstanding, sir, Sarah replied, handling the situation impressively well. But our system shows your seat as 5C. All first-class window seats are already taken. If you'd like, I can look for an upgrade or alternate arrangements on a later flight. A later flight? He repeated, suddenly standing up. For a moment I wondered if he might become physically confrontational. Do you know what I have riding on this trip? I'm meeting with investors in New York about a $50 million deal. I need to work during this flight. I need this seat. And some old man who probably bought his ticket on discount isn't going to ruin this for me. The cabin fell silent. Everyone in first class was now watching. Passengers in their places, flight attendants pausing their tasks. All eyes were on us, waiting to see what would happen. Right then, I could have revealed who I was. I could have shown my ID or quietly explained that I wasn't just another traveler. But something stopped me. Maybe pride, maybe curiosity. I wanted to see how far he would go. I wanted to know whether there was any decency beneath all that arrogance, any basic respect for others. Sir, I said in a steady voice, I understand you're under a lot of pressure. Business can be demanding, but this is the seat assigned to me. I checked in on time, and I'm only asking you to take the seat listed on your ticket. That's all. He actually laughed. A short, harsh sound with no real amusement behind it. You know what your problem is, old man? He said, you're from another time. You don't understand how things work now. It's about efficiency, results, making progress. People like me drive the economy. We create jobs, make deals, move billions. People like you. He let his eyes slide over me again. You're just in the way. I've been insulted before and in Hollywood and business and throughout my life. Over time, you learn to handle insults. But something about this particular dismissal bothered me. Not because it affected me personally, but because of what it stood for. The belief that some people are more valuable than others. That money and status somehow give permission to ignore someone's dignity or treat them like they don't exist. The captain had been informed of the issue and came out of the cockpit. He was an experienced pilot, someone I had met a few times before, though he didn't seem to recognize me in my simple clothing. Gentlemen, he said firmly, we need to resolve this. The flight is being delayed. Turning to the man in the suit, he continued, Sir, you must move to your assigned seat or I'll have to ask you to exit the aircraft. You're going to remove me? The man replied, his voice full of disbelief and irritation. Do you know how often I fly with this airline? One call from me and your job could be gone. I know people at the highest levels here. The captain remained steady. FAA rules require passengers to sit in their designated seats. This is not optional. You have two choices: sit in seat 5C or leave the plane. You have 60 seconds. For a long moment, the man stood still, clearly wrestling with the consequences of missing his trip. Finally, with a harsh glare, he snatched his things and shoved past me, intentionally bumping my shoulder. "This isn't over," he muttered. "You've made a big mistake, old man." He dropped into seat 5C so forcefully that the passengers next to him leaned away and he sat stiffly, filled with anger. I settled into my seat, my assigned seat, and sent a quick message before takeoff. Sarah walked by and quietly apologized for the situation. "Please don't worry," I told her with a friendly smile. "You handled everything well and very professional. That's the service I appreciate." She looked relieved, thanked me, and went back to work. The takeoff was smooth. I attempted to focus on my paperwork, but I occasionally looked back toward row 5. The man was still working intensely on his laptop, and during the allowed phone use period, he made calls complaining about unacceptable service and formal complaints. I heard phrases like incompetent staff and someone will pay. About an hour later, after the meal service, I decided it was the right time. I pressed the call button and politely asked Sarah if I could speak with the head flight attendant and the captain when available. A short while after, I was invited to the area near the cockpit. The head flight attendant, Michael, and Captain Rodriguez were waiting. "Is everything all right, Mr.?" Michael checked the digital passenger list. I saw his expression change quickly as he recognized the name. Then he looked more closely at me and the realization was clear. "Oh, Mr. Eastwood, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize." I raised a hand gently. "No need to apologize. You couldn't have known, and honestly, I prefer it that way. But I want to ask about the passenger in 5C. Has he filed official complaints?" Captain Rodriguez nodded. "He's already asked to speak with me twice. He wants to file complaints against Sarah, against you, against the airline. He's talking about lawsuits and insisting he'll make sure jobs are lost." I nodded thoughtfully. "What's his name?" Michael checked again. "Marcus Thornton. He's a Platinum Elite member. Flies with us often for work." "Mr. Thornton," I repeated. "And he does travel with us frequently?" "Yes," Michael confirmed. "Roughly twice a month. Usually first class. Primarily on routes between Los Angeles and New York or Chicago." I paused to think. This was a customer who spent a significant amount of money flying with the airline I owned. Someone who traveled often and should have been exactly the kind of passenger we appreciated. But he was also a person who treated everyone around him, employees and other travelers, with clear disrespect and disregard. He represented something I had worked against throughout my career: the belief that wealth gives anyone permission to mistreat others. "Here's what I'd like to do," I told them. "When we land, please arrange for Mr. Thornton to be welcomed by airport services. Let him know his complaint is being handled seriously, and that upper management wants to meet with him right away to discuss his concerns. Bring him to the airline's executive lounge at JFK. Can this be arranged?" Both of them nodded, appearing curious but professional. "And make sure Sarah understands she did nothing wrong. In fact, I want her recognized for staying professional under challenging circumstances. Add a positive note to her file." "Yes, sir." "Absolutely," Michael responded. When we arrived at JFK, I collected my belongings and was among the first to exit the plane. I headed straight to the executive lounge, a space I had redesigned last year to be more relaxing and comfortable. I asked the staff to prepare the smaller conference room and to escort Mr. Thornton there upon arrival. Then I waited. Roughly 20 minutes later, I heard voices outside. The door opened and Marcus Thornton walked in, still in his costly suit and still carrying that air of self-importance. But now he also looked pleased with himself. He assumed he was about to witness employees lose their jobs. He believed his idea of justice would soon be enforced. He stopped abruptly when he saw me seated at the conference table alone. "What are you doing here?" he asked sharply. "I'm supposed to meet with senior management." I motioned toward the chair across from me. "Please have a seat, Mr. Thornton. I'm not sitting down with you. I'm here to report several complaints, including one about you. Where is the manager?" I stood slowly, walked over to the side table and poured 2 glasses of water. I placed one in front of the empty seat. "Mr. Thornton, my name is Clint Eastwood. You may know me from films, but that isn't relevant here. I'm here because I own this airline. Majority shareholder. I am the senior management." Throughout my career in film, I've seen many attempts at portraying shock, disbelief, fear, and humiliation, but nothing I had seen on screen truly compared to Marcus Thornton's reaction in that moment. His face lost color, his mouth opened and closed without a word, and his briefcase slipped from his hand, hitting the floor. Yes, I replied clearly. And before you say anything else, I need you to listen. Really listen. What I'm about to say matters more than your business deal, more than this flight, and more than keeping your platinum status. I sat down again and waited as he, moving slowly, almost stunned, finally took the seat across from me. You called me an old man today. Twice you told me to move to the back of the plane. You acted as if I had no value, as if my time and dignity meant nothing compared to yours. And honestly, if this had only been about me, I might have ignored it. I've been disrespected before, and it will likely happen again. At my age, those comments don't affect me much anymore. I took a sip of water and continued. But this wasn't only about me. You treated Sarah, a flight attendant, simply doing her job, with clear disrespect. You dismissed Captain Rodriguez, a pilot with 3 decades of experience. You made the entire first-class cabin uncomfortable with your actions. And you did this because you truly believed that your wealth, your status, and your business deal gave you the right to behave that way. He attempted to respond, but I raised my hand. I'm not finished. You said something that stayed with me. You claimed people like you drive the economy, create jobs, make deals, and move billions of dollars. And you're likely correct. I'm sure you excel at your work. I'm sure you hold a high position in your industry. But here's what you fail to understand. None of that, absolutely none of it, gives you permission to treat others as though they are lesser than you. I leaned slightly closer. Do you know why I travel the way I do? Why I don't surround myself with staff or people clearing paths for me? Because the moment you start believing you are more important than those around you, the moment you think the rules no longer apply to you, that is the moment you stop being a good human being. That is when you lose something essential about who we are meant to be. The silence in the room grew heavy. Marcus Thornton sat there, his expensive suit suddenly looking more like a disguise, his former confidence gone. When he finally spoke, his voice was hardly audible. I don't know what to say. That's a beginning, I replied. Not knowing what to say is better than speaking with misplaced certainty. Now let me explain what happens next. First, Sarah will receive commendation and a bonus for her professionalism in a challenging moment. Captain Rodriguez will get a letter recognizing his leadership, and every team member who saw what occurred today will understand that their dignity and their judgment are respected and supported by this airline. He nodded slowly, aware that consequences were coming his way. As for you, Mr. Thornton, I have a choice to make. I could remove your ability to fly with us. I could cancel your platinum status. I could notify every airline in our partner network about your actions today. And believe me, part of me wants to take that step. His face went from pale to nearly gray, but I won't do that. Do you know why? Because I believe people can improve. I believe that sometimes we must face our worst behavior in order to become better. Today you faced yours. The real question now is, what will you do with that insight? I took out a card and slid it across the table. This is the contact information for our customer relations department, not for filing a complaint. You don't get to file complaints right now. You need to offer apologies. I want you to write personal letters to Sarah, to Captain Rodriguez, and to every staff member affected by your actions today. Real apologies, not the kind created by legal teams. They should show that you understand what you did wrong. He took the card with unsteady hands. Second, your platinum status will be suspended for 6 months. During that time, you will travel like any other passenger. Maybe it will give you perspective. A reminder that every traveler is someone's parent, child, friend, someone who matters. I understand, he said quietly. Third, and most importantly, think about your $50 million deal. Think about the money, recognition, and success that come with it. Then ask yourself this. If you accomplish everything professionally but become the kind of person who treats others with disrespect, what have you really gained? I stood and walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at him. Here's what I've learned in my lifetime, Mr. Thornton. A person's worth isn't defined by their bank balance, job title, or the importance of their deals. It is defined by how they treat others when they have no requirement to treat them well. It is revealed in how they behave when they believe no one influential is watching. You failed that test today. But you now have a chance to do better. Not everyone gets such a direct reminder. Don't let it go to waste. I opened the door and left him alone in the conference room. The rest of my trip to New York passed uneventfully. I attended my meeting, handled what I needed to handle, and returned a few days later. The following week, I contacted the customer relations department. They informed me that Marcus Thornton had sent handwritten letters, sincere ones, acknowledging his behavior and apologizing without excuses. He included specific comments in each note, showing he understood what every person went through. 6 months later, when his platinum status was restored, he wrote directly to me. I still have that letter. In it, he explained that the incident on that flight became a turning point. His focus on success and ambition had pushed aside basic decency. He began therapy, rebuilt connections with family he had been neglecting, and changed the culture within his business, leading with more respect and fairness. I don't know if those changes lasted. I hope they did. I'd like to believe that sometimes confronting our worst behavior gives us the courage to grow. Here's what I learned from that moment. Respect isn't earned through wealth, power, or achievements. It is owed to every person simply because they are human. The older man in economy, the young flight attendant working the aisle, the pilot at the controls, the executive in the suit. Everyone deserves basic dignity, and for those who hold success, money, or influence, remember those are privileges, not entitlements. They do not make you more important. They simply give you greater responsibility in how you treat others, because in the end, when titles, money, and accomplishments fade, what remains is how we treated the people around us. That becomes our true legacy. That is what others remember. So the next time you're on a plane or in a store or anywhere you feel tempted to use status against someone, stop and think. You never truly know who you're speaking to. That older passenger might own the airline, but more importantly, he is a human being deserving of respect.